You have heard people say, vaping is just flavored air. But what actually happens to your lungs if you vape every day for 30 days? Maybe it is just a puff before bed, just to focus, just to relax, tiny hits that quietly turn into a daily contract. Within seconds, vapor travels from your lips down your airways, coating the delicate branching tubes that feed your lungs and blood. Tonight's cast: your lungs, your heart and vessels, your brain, nicotine, and the immune cells that patrol your airways. Nicotine rushes from lung to brain in seconds, locking onto receptors that control alertness, reward, and heart rate. Your heart responds with a subtle speed up, your blood vessels tighten a bit, small jolts that matter more when they are repeated daily. Inside the tubes of your lungs, droplets and chemicals settle on the lining cells that move mucus and keep your airways clean. You feel calmer or more focused, but your nervous system is learning. Stress plus break equals nicotine equals relief. Part of the hook is comparison, at least it is not cigarettes, while your lungs quietly adapt to a new chemical routine. So what if vaping is not an accident, but a daily habit for a full 30 days? How far do those lines move? As a physician and your filmmaker tonight, I will treat this like a real clinical experiment but tell it like a movie. In the next 20 minutes, you will see what 30 days of daily vaping can do to your lungs, your heart, your brain, and your sleep. We will compare two futures, one where vape clouds are your daily background, and one where your lungs actually get a month off. By the end, I want you to answer one honest question: is your pattern harmless, or a respiratory experiment you never meant to run? Day 1, you turn what used to be, occasionally, into, every day, or you simply admit that is already true. Within minutes of the first inhale, nicotine spikes, heart rate ticks up, and your airways feel a cool chemical mist. Your cardiovascular system plays along small surges in pulse and pressure each time you pull the vapor in. An hour later, nicotine levels fall. Focus dips, a faint irritability creeps in, and the vape calling your name is suddenly just there. Even on day 1, you build a mini loop: spike, relief, crash, urge, repeat. Your lung lining sees more than flavor. Tiny immune cells register irritation and begin to gather along the airways. You take a few last hits before bed, hoping it will calm your mind enough to sleep. In your brain, nicotine tweaks sleep wiring. You may fall asleep, but fragmentation and lighter sleep become more likely. Morning comes with slight fog. A quick hit becomes your new 9-hour start button. By day 3, vaping is less a choice and more the background music of your thoughts and breaks. Inside the lung tubes, cilia beat less efficiently, mucus thickens slightly, and immune cells camp out more. Wearables might show slightly higher average heart rate and less variability, especially at night. Stressful emails arrive. Your hand reaches for the vape, almost before you consciously decide. Your brain starts predicting. Certain times, certain emotions equal time to inhale. By the first weekend, vaping is social, habitual, and emotional, not just nicotine delivery. Some people notice slightly heavier breathing on stairs even after just a week of frequent hits. Microscopically, a week of daily exposure means more irritated patches and more mucus for your cilia to push. Week 1 has taught your body something. Nicotine is constant. Lung irritation is daily, and sleep is less deep than you remember. You rationalize the habit because parts of that story are true, even while your lungs and brain carry the cost. Nothing catastrophic has happened yet, so you keep going into the part of the story where patterns matter more than intentions. By week 2, your respiratory command center sees a trend long before you do. Average nicotine exposure climbs. Your brain spends more hours bathed in the drug and fewer hours truly clean. Brain cells respond by adjusting their receptors, making you feel normal at higher nicotine levels than before. In the lung map, small hotspots of irritation expand, nothing dramatic on a chest X-ray yet, but meaningful at the cellular level. A little throat scratch, An occasional cough, you blame the weather, not the vapor you inhale all day. Cilia that should sweep mucus out beats slower and less effectively under repeated aerosol and chemicals. Your lungs' immune patrol spends more time processing foreign droplets and less time at true rest. Resting heart rate creeps up small, but over thousands of beats a day, it signals extra autonomic strain. Nicotine's vessel tightening effect can nudge blood pressure upward, especially if you already live near the high side. Dependence is not just chemistry. It is a loop where vaping becomes your fastest, most reliable way to change state. By mid-month, cravings show up just because you are used to relief arriving on schedule, not because anything is truly wrong. Your brain pairs certain places, sounds, and people with nicotine, so just seeing them lights up your reward circuitry. Cardio feels slightly harder. Lungs that deal with daily irritants have less reserve for real exercise. You blame fitness, not airways. But part of the story lives in those inflamed small tubes. Chronic lung irritation contributes to a low-grade inflammatory tone that your heart and vessels quietly inherit. At day 20, the control room summary is clear. More irritation, more beats, less restorative sleep, more frequent urges. Nicotine sharpens you briefly, but the more you rely on it, the less your brain trusts its own baseline focus. Each hit nudges dopamine up. Between hits, your baseline may feel flatter, making everyday life seem dull without the device. Sleep becomes lighter and more broken. You rarely notice every awakening, but your heart and brain do. You stack stimulants, caffeine plus nicotine to push through mornings, keeping your heart in a higher gear. Inflammation does not stay in the lungs. Signals leak into your circulation, nudging vessels toward a less relaxed state. On social media, vaping is a toy. Inside your chest, it is an experiment in airway chemistry you can't see in mirror selfies. You can be high-functioning and still be training your lungs and brain to expect nicotine all day. Tolerance means you feel less buzz. Not that your lungs, heart, or receptors experience less impact. Part of you wants out. Part of you is terrified of facing stress, boredom, and emotions without the crutch. Scary facts alone rarely change behavior. Discomfort makes you scroll, not necessarily stop. Irritated airways may respond worse to infections, more cough, more reactivity, slower recovery. 30 separate days of just vaping blend into one long, uninterrupted exposure in the life of your lung tissue. Other people sometimes notice the side effects before you are willing to admit them. The good news: much of this is early and reversible. The catch: the longer you stay, the stickier the wiring becomes. If you add asthma, allergies, smoking, or heart disease, daily vaping tilts the equation much faster. This is why doctors now ask specifically about vaping, not just cigarettes. The conflict crystallizes as a question you may not want to answer honestly yet. At day 30, your lungs feel used, your heart worked, your brain more attached than you expected. The challenge now is simple: repeat this experiment by default, or design the next month on purpose. To answer that, we need to zoom deeper into lungs, heart, brain, and dependence. Come into the lab with me. We will go organ by organ through what daily vaping really does. We will start with lung lining and airways, then move to cardiovascular strain, brain wiring, and systemic inflammation. Our main chemical character is nicotine, with help from solvents, flavors, and fine particles you inhale with it. Let us put the command center in deep dive mode and see where the next 30 days could lead, or what happens when you step back. Think of your lungs, heart, and brain as rooms connected by the same air and blood. Each vape session coats your airway lining in aerosol droplets that your cleaning system must constantly handle. Microscopically, repeated hits can irritate cells, blunt cilia, and alter mucus properties even before obvious symptoms. Particles deposit unevenly, often reaching small airways where clearance is slower and inflammation more consequential. Some studies suggest small changes in lung function over at a time, especially in people with asthma or dual use with cigarettes. Alveolar macrophages, your lung vacuum cleaners, fill up with particles and oily droplets they were not designed to handle. Irritated airways respond more dramatically to cold air, exercise, or infections, making wheeze and tightness more likely. Nicotine stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, pushing heart rate up and squeezing vessels just enough to matter over time. Vascular lining cells see more inflammatory signals and oxidative stress, which can reduce their ability to relax on demand. If you already have high blood pressure, daily nicotine layers extra strain on a system that is already under load. Chronic stimulation tends to raise resting heart rate and lower heart rate variability, markers of lower resilience. Fine particles and inflammation can influence clotting pathways more relevant over years, and in high-risk people. In the brain, nicotine rewires reward networks, making cues and rituals around vaping disproportionately powerful. The more often you spike dopamine with a device, the more ordinary life feels flat without it. Skip a day and you may feel edgy, unfocused, more irritable. That is not just personality, it is withdrawal. Dependence is a spectrum. Daily use plus discomfort when you stop means you have moved further along than you thought. Sleep is when your heart should get its safest shift, nicotine fragments, that shift and keeps your wiring more alert. You label the result, busy and tired. Monitors tell a clearer story of overstimulation and underrest. An irritated lung speaks to the rest of the body, adding to the background inflammatory noise that shapes long-term risk. For younger lungs, vaping builds a risk pattern earlier in life. For older lungs, it layers onto decades of exposures. Using vapes to keep smoking sometimes leads to dual use, which often combines risks instead of replacing them. The comparison that matters most is not vape versus cigarettes. It is both against the option of clean, unmedicated airways. If every feeling has one solution, more vapor, your emotional and coping muscles atrophy alongside your cilia. The hopeful side. Many of the early changes you have seen can improve within weeks if you cut down or stop. A month of daily vaping and a month of clean lungs produce very different curves for inflammation and cardiovascular load. People who cut their dependence often describe fewer coughs, easier breathing, and less mental background noise about vaping. In patients with asthma, stopping vaping frequently means fewer flares and less need for rescue inhalers. Lung tissue is surprisingly forgiving when you stop giving it extra work every hour. But timing matters. The earlier you change, the more you deal with functional irritation, not structural remodeling. At some point, the real question is not, is vaping safer than smoking, but, is it still worth what it is doing to me? Daily vaping is one square on the board. When you add poor sleep, stress and inactivity, the overall position worsens. Your brain can adapt in both directions. What it learned to expect in 30 days, it can slowly unlearn. Nicotine drives dependence, but solvents, flavors and fine particles all play a role in your lungs, reaction. When you give your lungs a break, your heart and brain quietly say thank you too. From this vantage point, you are not a good or bad vapor. You are the one person who can change the inputs. Expect cravings and habits to protest first. Your heart and lungs need a bit longer to show their relief. After a month without daily aerosol, many people report deeper breaths and less chest tightness climbing stairs. Resting heart rate often drops. Heart rate variability improves, and sleep feels more like actual rest than a chemical crash. Cravings rarely vanish overnight, but their volume and frequency can drop with each week you hold your line. Your organs do not speak English, they speak in trends, and less daily vaping usually bends those trends the right way. Now let us turn this biology into a strategy you can actually live with. For lungs and hearts, the sweet spot is simple. The fewer nicotine days and puffs, the better. If you are vaping all day now, phase it. Fewer hours, then fewer days, instead of expecting instant zero. Removing the morning hit weakens nicotine's grip on your entire day. Shrink nicotine's territory. No vaping in bed, at your desk or in the car. Make it less fused with everything you do. Give stress other exits, so your nervous system stops believing vapor is the only way out. Track puffs or sessions. Lumbers give you something to celebrate besides just "I failed" or fewer "I succeeded." If dependence is strong, medically supervised nicotine replacement or medications can help your brain step down more safely. Quitting is easier when you are not the only one doing it. Other people's charts and struggles make yours feel normal. Practice one sentence that protects your lungs without turning every hangout into a debate. Make the easiest thing to reach something that does not hit your receptors: water, gum, a simple breathing reminder. The hardest part is not nicotine. It is the empty space in your evenings. Fill it deliberately. Every nicotine-free day is a training session in the opposite direction for your receptors and your airways. Light movement helps lungs clear mucus, calms the nervous system, and gives you a different way to feel your body. Better sleep makes cravings less vicious and withdrawal less brutal. It is not a reward, it is equipment for the fight. Simple, repeatable rules beat a perfect plan that collapses the first stressful week. Run the opposite experiment, more nicotine-free days than vape days, and let your lungs and heart show you what they prefer. If you have asthma, heart disease, are pregnant or very young, the bar for quitting completely is much lower. Identity statements help your actions catch up with the person you are trying to become. Your choices also define second-hand exposure for people around you, especially kids and partners. As a lung and heart doctor, my core advice is clear: no inhaled nicotine is best. If you can't get there yet, less and less often still matters. A bridge you never step off just becomes a different road. Future you either walks upstairs without thinking or sits in waiting rooms paying interest on today's choices. You do not need shame to change, just enough truth to make small promises you actually keep. Let "I survived this day" mean a moment of genuine rest, not just another hit. Give it time, and a life with cleaner lungs and fewer chemical jolts starts to feel like the new normal. In one breath, daily vaping irritates your lungs, strains your heart and sleep, and cutting back lets them loosen that load. Where you sit on this scale shapes your risk far more than the flavor name on your device. You have seen the inside story. A month of daily clouds. And a month where your lungs finally get to breathe for themselves. This is not about fear, it is about leverage, using your next 30 days to lower risk, instead of quietly stacking it. Next time your thumb reaches for the device, remember what those airways were originally designed for. Your next 30 days are unwritten. You can keep proving nicotine owns your brakes, or test what happens when it does not. My professional challenge: give your lungs more vape-free days than vape days, and let your breathing and sleep be the judge. If this helped you see daily vaping differently, hit like, subscribe, and stay for more science about your lungs and heart. Share this with the person who jokes about always having their vape, this is their lungs, side of the story. Now I want to hear from you. How many times a day do you honestly vape? And what would your lungs say if they could vote on that number?